Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Paranormal News. Tonight's article comes from collectiveevolution.com and the headline is FBI Document Claims U.S. Government Brought Down Extraterrestrial Craft with Bodies Inside. It was published on January 27th, 2021 and it was written by Arjun Walia. In brief, the facts. The most viewed document from the FBI archives touches upon the idea that the U.S. government was responsible for 3 UFO crashes in 1950. Each craft had 3 bodies inside. Reflect on, are we being visited? How long have we been visited? How many different races have visited us? Why? Why the secrecy? Is humanity ready for contact? What are the implications? Do they avoid mass and open contact? Apollo 13 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell once told the world that, quote, yes, there have been crashed craft and bodies recovered, end quote. He is seen making these statements in this documentary, and then there's a link there to the documentary. Eric W. Davis, a renowned astrophysicist who worked with the Pentagon UFO program, stated that he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March 2020 about retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Christopher Mellon, a former Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary for Intelligence from 1997 to 2002, has confirmed that he was present during this testimony. He himself has been quite outspoken about the phenomenon over the past few years. Dr. David Clark, an investigative journalist, reader, and lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, who was also the curator for the National Archives UFO project from 2008 to 2013, came across some interesting documents suggesting that the UK was desperate to capture UFO technology. Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Defense Minister, claimed that the protocol when military jets were scrambled to intercept a UFO was to shoot first and ask questions after. The thought of attempting to show aggressive actions against objects that show no aggression themselves is concerning to me. This activity on our part, humans, comes when the behavior of these objects are not indicative of any type of threat. They often perform evasive maneuvers to avoid our aircraft, and the majority of the time, there is no type of retaliation observed. This makes one question our own behavior and the way our governments have responded to the UFO phenomenon. It's not something to be proud of, in my opinion. The information above isn't even the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the topic of crash UFO retrievals. There are numerous stories suggesting that multiple governments have been successful in bringing down these craft in an attempt to find out more about them, and also, perhaps, reverse engineer them. Roswell is not the only case. Here's an article I wrote about the 1941 Cape Girardeau UFO crash, for example. Colonel Ross Dedrickson, who had a long stint with the Air Force, as well as the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, claimed that the detonation of nuclear weapons polluted the magnetic field which some of these craft relied on to operate. What happened? A document that made some noise within the mainstream in 2013 due to the fact that it's been viewed more than 1 million times and is, according to the FBI, their most viewed document, reads as follows. And this is the actual document that they're talking about here. An investigator from the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. They were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. According to Mr. Redacted informant, the saucers were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has a very high-powered radar setup in that area, and it is believed that the radar interferes with the controlling mechanisms of the saucers. It was written by Guy Hoddle, who was the head of the FBI's field office in Washington at the time, and addressed to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Many believe that the memo is based on a hoax that was carried out by a convicted con man named Silas Newton. Who really knows? At the end of the day, one thing is certain. We know that these objects are here. They're real. And that this is happening now. Mellon mentioned at the beginning of the article. Manuel Kirkland and other veterans have also hinted to the idea that some of these objects have been brought down because of radar. Here's a brief clip of Kirkland explaining, and then there's a link there as well. And I'll be putting the link to this article in the description box, so you can go to the actual webpage and click all of these links if you want to. The document is from the 1950s, a time when UFOs were quite popular within the mainstream, due to the fact that an explosion of sightings were observed and documented after the United States dropped the atomic bomb. There was so much public interest that President Truman held a press conference during this time and stated that they talk about the subject of UFOs at every conference that they've had with the military. Going on to state that there's always things like that going on, flying saucers, and they've had other things, you know. This was also around the time, 1952, when several unknown objects flew over the White House. Jets were scrambled, and as they approached the vicinity of the objects, the objects, accelerated at a tremendous pace and vanished. If all of this was going on 70 years ago, what has been discovered today? To me, crashed craft represents a loss of life. It's not something to be happy about. In fact, these events, in my opinion, are quite sad. Final thoughts. Mainstream media UFO disclosure is exploding after a decades-long campaign of ridicule and secrecy. Many people are concerned about this given the fact that trust in government as well as big media has fallen and continues to do so. This is, in my opinion, because big media outlets are notorious for controlling our perception of various events and issues. This is why they have such strong connections to intelligence agencies, government, and big corporations. I believe it's a big form of mind control. When it comes to mainstream UFO disclosure, I go much deeper into the conversation in an article I recently published, which you can read here, and there's a link there. It's quite interesting to ponder the idea that we are being visited and have been visited for longer than we know. Based on my research, this topic is somehow, in a way I can't explain here, connected with human consciousness. I believe it's a catalyst for us to become aware of aspects of ourselves we are not fully aware of yet, as well as one for questioning why we live on this planet the way we do. I believe it forces us to ask more questions about ourselves and the nature of reality as we know it, and perhaps ponder if there are better ways we can operate here on planet Earth. We are a race with unlimited potential. I have no doubt that we can create an experience where humans can live in harmony with the planet and all life can thrive. I feel we are natural explorers and naturally curious beings. I feel we are meant to traverse the stars and explore even more. I do not feel we are all supposed to go to school, get a job, pay bills, and die. There has got to be a way where everybody can have their basic needs met, which opens all of us up to a new level of freedom. Ask yourself, if money wasn't a thing or an issue, and we all had our needs met, what would we do? Would we crave material desires and sources outside of ourselves for happiness? Or would we start exploring, contemplating, questioning, and discovering? Is humanity ready for contact? Is human consciousness at a proper point? Are we still ruled by greed, ego, the desire for power and control? Or are we ready to operate from a place within that serves the collective? Can our world operate from a system of cooperation and service to others, instead of a competitive, every person for themselves type of mentality? And that is the end of this article. So this one is very, very interesting, and it's very cut and dry. I mean, you got a document here from the FBI that tells you that 3 separate times alien craft crashed, and we recovered bodies from each of the crashes. So beyond a shadow of a doubt, aliens exist, and the government knows about it and has alien technology already. Very, very obvious, very, very simple. The end of the article kind of started going towards like a socialist kind of message that is kind of It's one of those things that it's good in theory, right? Yeah, it'd be great if all of our needs were met and everybody had what they needed and nobody had to be poor and you weren't worried about going to work and making money all day and everything like that. The problem is communism and socialism never works. It never has in history and it never will. And the basic problem is if you give everybody what they need, there is no motivation anymore to go work. And you might say, well, that's a great thing. You wouldn't have to work. Okay, I get that for you. But that's very short-term thinking. Think about what happens when everybody who works in restaurants decide they're not going to work anymore because they get the stuff for free. So why should they have to go to work? Now all of a sudden, there's nobody working in the restaurants anymore. You can't go out to eat because there's nobody there. Extrapolate that out to every single bit of the service industry and retail stores and everything. And pretty soon you get to a point where nothing is open anywhere because nobody wants to go to work because everybody gets their stuff for free. Now, I think there should be some sort of middle ground between everybody's needs being met and everybody receiving free money to nobody being helped. There should be a middle ground, and there is in this country already. But I think we can do better. I have no problem with health care being provided free for every American. I think that should be a right. Healthcare should be a right. The problem that we run into with that is the people that are going to be running it are the government, and they're a bunch of liars and thieves. And you don't want to give them control over your life like that. I mean, that's literally control over decisions of whether you live or die. That's not the kind of power that you want the government to have because, frankly, everything the government touches, they destroy. Nothing they're involved in is ever successful, with the exception of the military. And the reason the military is successful is, for the most part, they stay the hell out of it. The only time the military isn't successful is when politics get involved, and you have these idiot politicians who set rules for engagement that are unreasonable and get our guys killed. So even that they ruin when they get involved in it. So as far as helping everybody goes, I'm all for it, but there's got to be a way to do it to where it doesn't destroy our whole way of life. Really has nothing to do with the article except for the last bit of it, but those are my 2 cents, so take them for what they're worth. As always, it is up to you to make up your own mind. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. And until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.